Okay, guys, welcome. Got a special extra event this month. At the time I'm recording this, it's for June 2026. And on here on the Reiki Shaman online, we're going to be talking about systems, frameworks that our work exists inside of,
Mm.
and how we move, between those things. And so sometimes I like to chat to one of you guys and got a long-term member and amazing community member, Dr. Josie Beug, and we are going to be talking about systems today through the framework of a system that I don't really know that much about. That's my preferred thing. So I get to be a nerd about it and just enjoy learning things. So, Josie, I know I can see how busy you are with all your work at the moment. So I really appreciate you taking the time for this.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to interrogating you. How are you feeling?
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I'm excited because I'm actually preparing to do like a 3-hour lecture on the framework that I've used over, goodness, probably over 25 years in my veterinary house call practice. But I'm an acupuncture I bring in a lot of different modalities. I'm a licensed veterinarian, but I'm an acupuncturist. I've studied Western herbs long before I became a veterinarian. I do Chinese herbs. I use a lot of flower essences. I do things like moxa and hands-on healing, Reiki, a lot of different things combined. And I found that this particular framework has really, allowed me to grow within it and also allowed me to like unravel cases so that we can get down to the root issues of things.
Yeah.
And as a preventative wellness framework that also reconnects us back to the earth, back to the greater macrocosm of the earth and Gaia, and that being our ultimate support system. You know, that's
Yeah.
it's the earth we stand on, the air we breathe. She provides our food, she provides our medicine, everything. So it kind of brings everything back to that as well.
I feel like there
Um,
aren't any frameworks that are really meaningful and authentic and have integrity and stuff if it only exists within the bubble of your work that you do and your life stuff doesn't fit within the
mhm.
principles of it. It's not really a framework so much as it's a
Yeah.
methodology for a job. This is whereas
Yeah,
I feel like
exactly.
you're in a framework, and to my mind, when I think about the work that you do, what I know about it, I'm obviously going to know more about it very soon.
Mhm.
But when I think about what you do, I think about your main frameworks. I know about the Reiki and the healing, and obviously we do shamanic practice and stuff together. And
Mhm.
I know that, like me, when you've been in the business for a really long time, you've been in the systems for a long time, you pick up all these different complementary modalities. I think of you primarily as sitting in this sort of traditional Chinese medicine and that five element kind of system. That's how
Mhm.
does that feel like the main framework for you? Because that's how I see you.
Yeah, it is. And but what's interesting as I've opened up and started this practice, I have a friend who's in one of my groups who's actually a human acupuncturist, and she she
As in
came
an
along
acupuncturist who works on
for
humans rather than one who just
that
so happens
practice.
to be a human.
Yes. She practices on humans, but she's studied what they're now calling classical Chinese medicine. So what's really interesting in Chinese medicine is that, and I wasn't even aware of this, but my she said, Josie, you're practicing classical Chinese medicine. And I'm like, oh, thank you for telling me because I wasn't aware of this differentiation. But when I first started, when I knew I wanted to use Chinese medicine as like a framework for my practice, as kind of a place of holding it and helping me diagnose and come back to because it's so ancient and because it goes back so many years. And when I first started, um, well, when I first walked into veterinary school, I saw, and this was in the mid 90s, hardly anybody was practicing acupuncture on animals. And there was a Doberman laying on the floor that I almost tripped over with acupuncture needles in the dog on my like 10 minutes after me stepping foot for the first time into the veterinary school, into a traditional conventional veterinary school. So I was
And
like, oh
whereabouts is
wow.
this school? Is it in some
It
really
was
like
in,
progressive
it was
place?
in, no, it was in Madison, Wisconsin. It was like in farm country in the middle of the
Wow.
United, yeah. And so, so I knew I was like, oh wow, spirit, I've landed in the right place, obviously. But then when I started taking, I graduated through vet school and then got out and I had to take a postgraduate class in acupuncture. And I waited, there was a new teacher that had come to the United States from China. The other acupuncture classes that were being taught is a school called, it's the International Veterinary Acupuncture Society, but it was formed in Europe, in England, and then brought to the United States. Well, there was a teacher that came straight from China, and he was at the University of Florida. And I was like, I want to learn from the guy who's coming from China, you know?
Yeah.
And it turns out he was actually a third generation Chinese medical person in his family, but his father and grandfather worked on humans. And over in China, he begged them to treat this dog he had when he was a little boy. He used to go up in the mountains and collect herbs with his grandfather and everything. I mean, foraging and making their own medicine and the whole deal. But his dad didn't want to treat the dog. And he's like, but he's another living being. So he broke with his family lineage, which is a huge deal in China, and went to veterinary school instead of human medical school. So he was my first teacher, but then when I signed up to go start his classes, I ran into a this is a kind of a long story, but I was sitting in an emergency room and I opened up this little, it was like a new weekly magazine, local magazine. And there was an ad in there that said, come learn about inner alchemy. And I was like, what's inner alchemy? I want to know about this. And again, this was like in 2000. And so I answered the ad. I called the person up. She was essentially a Taoist witch from Taiwan. And she lured like this small group of us in, like there was about 6 women, and we would sit down every day and have like this was like twice a week. We'd sit down and we would have a traditional Chinese tea ceremony, and then she taught us the internal workings of Taoism, the internal inner alchemy, where we learned about the meditation and breathing techniques to open up the microcosmic orbit. But she never told us exactly what she was teaching us. It was always like, okay, let's sit down. This is going to help you. This is going to heal you. But then I later like figured out what it was. But it was extremely powerful. And I worked with her for like 2 years. And just cultivating chi in the dantian and learning how getting to the point where you could circulate the energy through the microcosmic orbit and it would run on its own, and then you could circulate it through your heart. We would do circles and healing circles, and then we would go up and out. And I mean, she was taking me the very end of I worked with her for about 4 years, and at the last end of it, I had a dream one night, and she and I were flying in the dream over the mountains of Taiwan, and she was taking me to all of her favorite tea houses and showing them to me. And then we ended up because she also introduced me to my Tibetan teachers, we ended up in a Tibetan monastery. And she was like, listen, I have to go in and talk to this Rinpoche, just stay here. And I stayed out in this hallway. And I remembered it so clearly because I could see the paint on the walls, the colors, and I could see the patterns on the walls. And then the next, like about 3 days later, she had a big public gathering, like she was having a Chinese tea ceremony. And there was probably 20 people sitting around this long table. And she opened up her laptop and passed it around with pictures of her favorite tea houses in Taiwan. And
Mm.
I was sitting there at the table and she passed it to me. And she was always very sly with everything. And she just watched my face just to see what the expression was on my face when I saw these pictures. And it was exactly where she had taken me in the dream time. And then it turns out I looked up the Tibetan monasteries because I had never been to one at that point in time. And they're all painted like they have blue on the ceilings and these very specific painting colors. And that's how I knew I was there. So I entered the study of acupuncture with that really strong Taoist underpinnings, which
Yeah,
is
it sounds like you
really,
were studying on the inside and the outside at the same
and the
time, that you had
outside,
these two
yes.
teachers, but traditional kind of Taoist philosophy on both sides.
Yeah. And so what I found out is and I just found out this recently, most of the what we call TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, that has been imported from the East to the West, is a form that was developed after Mao took over, after the Cultural Revolution and the Maoist revolution, communists took over in China. What they did, I have a whole thing written on it, but it was really horrible what they did. Initially, they were like, well, this is the people's medicine. So he supported the traditional medicine because it was the people's medicine. But then they wanted to control it. So they went out and they were like, why do these people have to study and have an apprenticeship with this master out in the mountains forever and everything? So they literally they cut those ties with the original masters. There were actually people that had gotten killed and and picked up and murdered. They burned a lot of the texts, a lot of the like each person would have their own. It was like a book of shadows almost, but they call it the
It
Ben
was just what I
Chao.
was thinking there. That it
Yes.
sounds like just
They
not
it
just the handed down, but what they've developed as well.
what they've developed. So they would study what was handed down and then they would make their
Mm.
individual notes, or they would make their individual notes on the relationship they had with a specific herb or herbal formula. They took all that stuff and burned them and wanted to standardize the form of medicine. So they moved it all into these schools. But then what they wanted to do is they didn't have this huge population, no doctors. So they were pushing people through and just trying to get, so they started the barefoot doctors movement, but it was like, here's some acupuncture needles and herbs, go out and treat people. But they had lost so much of the traditional. So now what we are left with are these ancient texts that go way back to like 1000 BCE. I mean, we're talking, way back. And so there's a group of people here in the West this is only in the past 20 years, that have started going back to retranslate the ancient texts because their language is like it's pictographs, and each one of those characters tells a story.
Yeah.
And so there's layers and layers and layers of it. It's like the sun rising on the man who's laying. I mean, it's crazy involved. So there's people that are retranslating those classics, and so they're bringing back. You can't study the classics without going into Taoism. I don't care what anybody says, because it all begins with that. So they're going back into, and what I'm doing is I'm preparing like the five elements as a framework as an ecological form of medicine. So when I use it, I'm treating my animal patient, but I'm also treating the person who's sitting there in the room, myself, and reconnecting all of us back to the earth.
Right.
So and what's so interesting, like from, I don't, there's a thing we use also in magic, like the macrocosm. The microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm, as
Yeah.
within, so without, right?
Yeah.
That we say come from the Emerald Tablets and Hermes Trismegistus. Well, the Taoists use that same thing.
Yes.
And so that it's like a holographic fractal, our whole reality. So the health of the tree in our backyard is reflecting the health of our internal body, you know?
Yeah.
It's all connected into this big one
And
thing.
each framework is like that too, right? Because I work
Yes.
primarily in sort of like contemporary shamanism with sort of Celtic kind of Anglo-Saxony leanings, but also,
Uh-huh.
there's these kind of Lakota and other traditions that I've trained in little bits over the years that I owe
Mm-hmm.
a lot of debt to. But then the thing that I touch in on every day, probably more than anything else, is Reiki, which for a long time was taught as this sort of disconnected from Japanese culture. And I'm no expert in Japanese culture. I don't know
Yeah.
Shintoism and the background of that kind of pre-Reiki, sort of these mystical
Mm-hmm.
ideas or whatever, as anywhere near as well as understand Taoism. But like it was just this little compartmentalized thing that was from Japan, and these are the things that you do. And then exactly as
Yeah,
you're
that's how I
saying,
learned it.
at some point back in the 90s, a bunch of people realized that there was like this whole thriving movement of Reiki in Japan, and
Oh.
started going back. American, British, and German, for some reason, there's a massive Reiki movement in Germany. Went over to Japan, and learning the
Mm-hmm.
language, meeting people, understanding the culture within which, what it wasn't just about Buddhism, it was about Shintoism, and it was about
Mm-hmm.
Shuendo, and it was about all of these things that were
Mm-hmm.
kind of drawn together. So even the little frameworks that we're working in by ourselves, they can only be little work. They've all come from these huge things. And then
From
every
these,
now and then we have to lean back into the mystery of that a little bit, I think, to give the
oh,
framework some
totally.
kind of meaning.
Totally. Well, my whole first lecture, I started outlining, I went into just the fact of the elements, okay, what we call the elements. There's the four elements and a lot of, but I went back and found just that concept is from almost all the major traditions, at least, and
Yeah.
every single continent on this planet. So you
Mm.
have the Chinese, it started as the four elements for the four cardinal directions, and then they put like the earth in the center, but you have the Ayurveda has the four elements, and the fifth element being ether or spirit.
Yeah.
That translates into the tantric four elements and five elements, actually, where in Buddhism. And I also I received those teachings as well. It's like when we preparation for dying, we dissolve, each one of those elements dissolves into the next until you are totally dissolved back into the spiritual. But and then there's, so that's, India, it's Tibet, we have the Greeks, and they had the four elements, and Aristotle added the fifth as ether, and Hippocrates used the four elements and the four humors in his system of medicine. You have the Lakota with the sacred hoop and circle with the four elements, and their correspondences are very similar to the Chinese correspondences to them. So, and then you have all of South America as well. So you're going, it's almost like a like
And
a
over here on my sacred land, we have
yes,
our cardinal
the
directions are
health,
now
yes.
the
Well,
Celtic
and it went it
wheel
ca-
and all of that. I mean, a
yeah,
lot of
from the
that's
early,
reconstructed. A lot of it's reconstructed, of
yeah,
course, but it makes sense here. And our
but
directions sit slightly differently, but they are elemental and cardinal.
yeah, but I think it's something that's in humans, that how we map out the world and
Yes,
phenomena and
I
everything
agree.
else, because it's just too widespread. It's just too ubiquitous. Now,
Yeah.
one of these translators is really interesting. She's German, but she wrote a beautiful book called Humming with Elements. But she talks about, because we look at the elements, and there's five, but then there's also a system in Chinese medicine where we have the four cardinals with the earth sitting right in the center.
Hmm.
But there's correspondences to each one of those directions, right? And so she talks about them, instead of being correspondences or associations or something that we think is just on a mental frame, she talks about them as having energetic resonances. with this particular underlying energy. So
I
say
like
you
that
have
word.
fire, exactly. And we were talking about reshaping, reframing words. So like
Yes.
just take fire element alone, which we're coming into summer. It's a season of the fire element. Well, of course it is. We're talking about how hot we are and we feel like we're being scorched by the sun. So those are all resonances to fire. Plus, it's also a time when people want to get outside and you want to socialize and you want to go on the picnics and go to the beach. And those are all resonances again to the fire element, which is a very centered in the heart, but associated with like joy and laughter. In Chinese medicine, the heart is at the tip of the tongue, and it's all the emotion associated with joy, laughter, and community, that type of thing. But so
Mm.
she talks about these as resonances, and even when we, in magic, we use the four elements all the time: calling,
Yeah.
steadying the circle,
Yeah.
and invoking a circle. I mean, I use it. I always have my Hecate practice, and of course I use it. And the watch guards are the four directions.
Yeah.
But again, they all resonate. If you look at them, there's a lot of things that have been reconstructed and handed down, but like some of them, like I found one. I have a lot of experience out in the Lakota tradition as well, but I found one website, you could tell they reconstructed them because they didn't get there were things that were just off. It didn't resonate, the correspondences that they had set up, but when it is right, you feel it's something you feel, and you can, what I've led an online community in this, tracking it through the seasons, because that's the easiest way to track these elemental forces. And in
Mm.
Chinese medicine, in the classic Chinese medicine, we're talking about it as resonances. And say fire, it's not the fire, the actual physical thing. It's the chi, the vital force of the fire that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So it's that energy of those flames. Now, fire can be anything from like a bed of coals that you think are almost out until you blow on them and they burst into flames. And then you get these dancing flames. It could be a single candle flame, but there's warmth radiating from it. It's like if our hearts are open, warmth
Mm.
radiates from our hearts. So there's all these things you can play around with. And then,
Yeah.
so like fire is summer, and earth, they put, because this is interesting as well. For the five elements, the Chinese put the five elements on a circle and draw a five-pointed pentagram
Yeah.
to connect them. So this, if you go on the outside of the circle, around the outside of the circle, connecting each element, they call that the creation cycle. So they
Hmm.
have wood feeds fire, because wood is the fuel for fire.
So
It
this is the
burns.
order, right? Because
Yes.
we're so excited talking about like, look at all these amazing mystical things. But let's say it. What are the five elements for people who don't use that
Yeah.
system?
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. There's something inherent that there's a version of this everywhere.
Yeah.
I think all
So
humans
there's
resonate. But what's the Chinese one, and where do we
the
start?
The Chinese, they add wood and metal instead of okay, so they start at wood. Wood is
Hmm.
like the birth. It's like the seedling popping out of the seed the seeds underneath the earth all tucked in from winter, and then it starts feeling the warmth of the sun, and that seedling pushes this little tiny thing, pushes up through the earth up towards the sun. And that's a really forceful energy, right? So
And that's
that's like,
part of the wood element rather than the earth
yeah,
element. I like that. I didn't know that
it's wood because it's
because it
growing.
will
It's
be.
the
It's
tree.
alive. Mm.
It's going
Yeah.
from a little tiny seedling or acorn into this big giant oak tree. So
Right.
it's all about growth. It's all about pushing forward. It's all about like forceful, it's the will. It has to do with the liver. So it's the will to move forward. And when you thwart the wood element, when you put something in its way and keep it from moving, that's when it gets sick and it gets stagnant and bad things happen. Like anger comes up because
I was
it's like,
going to say,
no,
so we're wood, we're growth, we're spring, presumably in
yes,
this moment.
spring. Yep.
And when you said it's in the liver, that if I was gonna, because I don't know this system right, if I was gonna make it
Hmm.
up myself and go, well, where's the liver gonna be? I'd be like, surely that's in fire, because I know from my healing work that when you work on issues of the liver, you're always dealing with anger. Oh, like almost always dealing with anger.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep.
surprised to see that in that sort of growth and spring part of
But
it.
think about it, if you're trying to grow and then there's
Yeah,
an obstacle and you're
frustration.
pounding your head in it starts out as impatience and frustration and then
Yeah,
turns into outright anger.
right.
That's why, because the liver, that energy wants to move. And I see it in dogs all the time, young dogs. They need to go out and run 5 miles. If you're not allowing them to move and move that energy, they get really nasty. It has to come out somewhere and it gets bottled up inside. So
Yeah, that
that's
makes
like
sense.
wood. Yeah. And then wood feeds fire on the outside of the circle. We go up to fire because wood provides the fuel for fire. And fire has to do with our hearts and, like I said, joy, summertime. And then from fire, when things burn in the fire, it leaves behind ash, and that ash feeds the soil, right? It adds minerals back into the soil. So if you're composting and adding ash into your compost and into your garden, so that's nourishing the earth element.
Okay. Wood
And the
through fire, then
earth
earth. Okay.
Earth, yeah. And then Earth gets nourished from the fire, but the earth is the GI tract in the body. It's the spleen and stomach. So, like all of our microbiomes that are in our guts are like the microbiome in the soil, in the dirt
Mm,
outside. So, the actual dirt is associated with is earth element.
yeah, that
And then
makes
Earth is, yeah, Earth is the Earth Mother. They like to take Earth personalities like to take care of everybody. They want everything to be smooth. They worry and pensiveness is the emotion associated with it because they want the household to be calm and everybody to be happy. And when there's conflict and stuff, it really affects them a lot. So you get like, acid reflux or GI issues when there's too much
Mm,
worry. It's kind of that
okay.
gut intuition thing too.
And when you say
Um,
like earth people, are you referring into like
like
what
a
we would
constitutional.
consider in like Western astrology, or are you talking about like people within Chinese astrology, or are you talking about a system where you're assigning it by their
Well, it's more like a person. There can be constitutional types that go
right,
along with each one of these elements. But
right?
Western astrology, that I do combine that in with this. So the Earth planets are, like Virgo, Taurus, what's the other one? Capricorn.
Yeah,
So are very Earth. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and then from Earth helps create metal, and this is where it gets a little interesting. But if we think about metal as like the iron ores deep in the earth, the pressure and the heat of the earth on top of them separate them out. And when we get pure iron ores or pure elements mixed put together, we end up with the metallic, with the gold and the silver and the iron and the bronze
Mm,
out in the earth. And I also include in there like the stones and the pure crystals because they're created by that heat and pressure of the earth on them.
mhm.
And I think they brought in metal because when these were formed, it was, well, they were talking about these elements way, way back, but there was this period called the Warring Period in ancient China where they were literally tribes fighting against each other. And metal it has to do with, it's kind of like the air element in the other system. And
Okay.
I think of it as like air because it's very cutting. It's very it likes to follow the rules and order, and it'll cut through things to get to the, no fluff type of thing. Um
Mm. And that makes me think of, well, because I feel like, if you've put in your decades, I feel like you can start mixing up your
mhm.
influences. We've earned our right to do that, Josie, over the years. Like I'm thinking of like excuse me, of like the swords in the tarot is referred to as like
Yes.
an air correspondence, and it's partly
Yes.
sort of battle and conflict, but it's partly clarity and being able to cut through stuff, and the same thing.
Exactly, exactly. And there's swords, it's metal, you
Yeah.
know? And the sword, and we also think of like the metal, and this is where metal nourishes water. But if you have like a metallic surface, water will beat up on it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll condense. It's like the water condensing on it. And so that's how they say like the metal creates the water. It'll condense water. That's how we make distilled water or purified water. Or just have it if you
Mm-hmm.
have a boiling pot on the stove, you have that water condensing on the lid and dripping
Yeah.
back down.
Yeah.
Then the water element is a really, and metal is for the autumn. It's a time of letting go. And the emotion
Mm.
is grief.
The cutting
So we have
back
sound
and
and
yeah.
cutting back, and so the energy, like spring and summer, wood and fire are all energy moving outward. They're very yang directed, so it's coming
Mm.
from the inside and moving out. Earth is neutral, and then with metal and autumn, we start moving back inwards and down back into the earth. So it's a very
Mm.
yin directed energy.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's letting go and cutting back and harvesting, bringing in what we need, releasing what we don't need, getting ready to go into winter. And winter is the water element. So it's
Mm.
like the most philosophical of the elements, but it's where we crawl back into our caves and hibernate and go back into that. We're not even the seed yet. We're like dreaming the seed into being.
That
So
is a
it's that deep
nice,
time.
yeah, that's a nice little crash course in the
Yeah.
circle of it. And you know, it's not part of the Reiki system, for example, and it's not part of any of the systems that I've followed. So like I coming in with my beginner's mind. And it's so nice to hear it. I feel like when you talk about it, it doesn't feel academic to me. It feels like you're talking about the philosophy and the lived experience, and sort of the taste of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
The real sense
Hmm.
of like what it is in the body, what it is in the land, in the seasons, what it is in our thought process, what it is in our healing, what it is that's
Yep.
blocked. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about the systems today, because I
Yeah.
feel like you're like me. You have that nerdy side where you're like, oh, I
Hmm.
better spend 5 years reading books on this now because like I've got obsessed with something. Because we want to know
Yeah.
where it comes from, and we want to know, you know, I mean, we go down our rabbit holes, don't we? Because we want to have the academic knowledge and the
Oh,
sort of
definitely.
the book learning knowledge is important to both of us. But I feel like both of us think that book learning is irrelevant if you don't use the information, if you
Yeah.
care about the
Yeah.
felt experience as well as the
Yeah.
kind of understood experience. And I know that you live your practice that way, and I can feel that sort of stretching out of wanting to understand where the thing has come from in terms of the wider sense, like the cultural
Hmm.
impact, but also these cross-cultural, cross-systemic, like cross-pollination things going on that we can
Yeah.
feel. Because obviously you are not in China, you are in Florida, so you've got to
Yeah.
make it work for the land that you're on,
Yeah.
and for your own
Yeah.
history and background. And then I can see that there's a framework, as you were talking about it, there's something that you could use for healing. And of course, I knew that that's what it's about because it comes from that Chinese
Hmm.
medicine kind of idea. But I can see really easily how you could sit and have that conversation with a human patient, right? And you could
Hmm.
talk about the movement of energy in the
Hmm.
body, and you could say, oh, this block in the body is about
Hmm.
this. I can see how you could attach it into philosophy and engage with a person, not in a counseling, like you and I, we're not
Yeah.
counselors, but like when we're dealing with our groups, like you
But
run
we
groups
are,
and
and
things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've got to tie the
yeah.
energy work to our thought process and our engagement and our connection with the world, right? Otherwise it doesn't work
Hmm.
properly. We both feel that way. How on earth Do
Am
you
I
get
doing it
to
with the
work within
animals?
this for animals, right? Because this is what's so fascinating about your practice. I never heard of anyone doing this stuff for animals before. And I love that you are.
Animals, animals. I mean, right, actually, right as COVID was happening, I was really deep into my Hecate work, but I had some downloads come through, and it was like they were so strong I couldn't ignore them. I had to get up and like write it out and figure this stuff out and write it down. And one of them was that if we're gonna survive and go through these huge times of transformation that we're in, and nobody can, I mean, we're seeing it all around us. Systems are old systems that were an overlay on the earth are that have never worked, and not for the
Yeah.
majority of people. At least they've worked for a very small percentage of people,
Yeah. I'm pretty
but
sure
not
they're
for the
working really
majority of
well
people.
as
And
planned for the
exactly.
guys who made
but
them.
but in order to survive like the crash of all this and all this transformation, and to get us back to a better place, we've got to return to these earth-based traditions and knowledge and wisdom, and they're here for us. And I do think if we really sit, we have it in our bones, we have it in our ancestors. They're all here. Look,
Hmm.
they're like shouting at us. Think of, we never even heard of people doing ancestral work 10 years ago, even hardly, you know
That's true. I mean, it was in the weird,
It-
witchy, I
yeah,
was
but
such a
now
weirdo for doing
it's,
Reiki back then. Like, you couldn't
yeah,
find
but
people talking
now
about it.
it's like
Everyone does it now.
everyone's doing it. You can say, oh yeah, I'm talking to my ancestors, and a lot of people don't blink an eye, right? so
Yeah.
so we have these influences screaming at us, going, this, there's a way through this and a way forward. And I got it through the animals, because I think that there is, as the animal kingdom together, and we have the bird people and the animal people and all of these things, and we talk about this in shamanism, but they are there to help point us in the right direction. And our
Mm.
domesticated animals, our dogs and cats, for many people, have become their whole entire emotional support, and their family. How many of us are living alone and we have our dog and cat that we tell all our woes to? And I see this all
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
They have taken up a very, very prominent role in our lives. And so they don't they may not speak English to us, but they speak behaviorally to us all
Yeah.
the time. And they also, I don't call myself an animal communicator, but I get a lot of communications from them all the time. I mean, my
Mm.
my cat right now is telling me amazing spiritual truths that I'm trying to write down, but they're really trying to point us in the way. And so by a person caring for an animal, it's kind of their last link back into the natural world, into
That's a
nature.
nice way to think about it. Because you can't show up
Mhm.
with your nonsense to your
Yes,
pets, can
you
you?
can. Yeah.
Because they have very specific needs that need to happen. Like, they're very
Yeah.
simple, and they respond to, like, you know to the emotion of a thing, to what we're carrying in our body. They respond to what's in our space, and to what we're
Yeah.
carrying as well.
And they'll mirror that back. I mean,
Mm.
they'll even mirror our diseases back. I can't
Uh,
tell you
uh,
the number of animals I've seen that it will. I had this was all the way back in veterinary school. I had to tell this, we got biopsy results back on this little poodle, and I had to go tell the owner what the results were, and it was for a nasal adenocarcinoma. And when I told him, he almost fainted. I thought he was going to fall on the floor. I had to literally catch him. And I just gave him, luckily it was me going in the room, because I don't think a lot of people, but I just gave him a few minutes. I was just like, just take a few breaths, sit down, let's just take a few breaths and just get your feet underneath you. And I just kind of held him in that presence for a few minutes. And then he told me, he said, you're not going to probably believe this, but my nasal adenocarcinoma went into remission the week that my dog's nose started
ooh,
bleeding.
Right. So,
you
because
know?
I was just about to ask you, in that case, right? Because obviously I know energy systems, if they work, and we know that they do, right? I don't know that they all do, but the ones
Yeah,
that we are using, we know that they work. We know shamanism works. We know Reiki works. We
yeah,
know that traditional Chinese medicine and elemental systems work. Um, so you don't need language in order for those
yeah.
things to be playing out within the body of an animal. So I do Reiki on animals, on rescue animals as of particularly,
Hmm.
and they respond because it works. It doesn't need to be spoken. It just works energetically. When you
Yeah.
were talking there, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if, well, actually, are they mirroring the same, like the illnesses that their humans are carrying?
Yeah.
And you are talking specifically about, I mean, what would you say that was? Would you say that the bond between the two energetically is so close and intertwined that the animal was able to absorb it from the human? Or do you think that the patterns and the imbalance of the elemental system that produce the illness in the human would also produce it
Uh,
in the animal?
I think it's a combination because
Wow.
I think you're talking, I think it's all intertwined. Because I
Yeah.
think, like you're saying, the imbalances are toxins. There's also something called, well, they talk about it in homeopathy called miasms, or it's like an energetic matrix. I
Yeah.
see it as like an energetic overlay, almost like those old, we had like in the encyclopedias, you had that clear see-through things so you could peel back so it would show you like
Yeah.
the arteries and veins, and then it would show you the nervous system, but you could peel it off, but they were all kind of see-through. But I
Yeah.
see it as something like that, as like an energetic matrix, because I've seen whole households affected by like the same form of cancer. They've had their water tested, their earth tested under their house, all of this stuff done, couldn't necessarily find anything. They were eating different things because it's human and animal, but it's, you wonder on an energetic thing. And then you can also bring in like karmic stuff. Is it some pattern that they brought in from another
Right.
time period?
Ancestral things playing out.
Ancestral.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many different layers to it, and I don't think we can just say, well, one's valid and the other's not,
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
there's not. And then I also see, just from a Buddhist perspective, because I've practicing Tibetan Buddhism for a long, long time. But it's like some of these animals, I really feel they're like bodhisattvas. Like they will come in to take on a person's suffering to try to
Mm.
ease away. And I see that all the time. And the people get guilty about it. They're like, but, they'll say, oh, I've had this pain in my hip. And their dog all of a sudden shows up with a pain in their hip. And I'm like, listen, don't, instead of feeling guilty, which is such a toxic emotion, thank them for
Mm.
doing what they're doing. If they're trying to help you, thank them and receive that into your heart and send it back to them. Because that's the whole thing with the Buddhist thing. If you give, it's like giving a kata to the Rinpoche, they will right away turn that around and send the blessings and thanks right back to you. So it's keeping the energy moving and keeping that circle moving. So maybe it doesn't get stuck
Mm.
in one place. But
Mm.
yeah, so there's so many layers to it, Kay. And over the
Right.
years, I'll think I'll have like a handle on it and a certain thing, and then another case will come
Yeah.
along, and I'll be sitting there just like going, "Wow."
Yeah.
It's far
Same for me.
beyond.
Same
It's
for
far
me.
beyond what little me knows at this point.
It's one of those fun things,
Yeah.
isn't it? I think probably once you
Yeah.
get about 10 years or so, you think like, yeah, I like really know stuff. By the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
you get to like 20 years, you're like, I don't
I don't know
really know
shit.
anything. I know how to stand here and conduct myself inside this
Yeah.
mystery that is continuing to unfold, giving me brand new
Sometimes I know
information all
that,
the
and
time.
sometimes I don't even know that. you know.
It's such a
But yeah,
joy, and it's
yeah,
because the systems are so big, right? And they,
they
as you
are.
say, it's the elements, it's the philosophy,
Yeah.
It's the body, and it's the mind, and it's the communities, and it's the earth
It's
itself,
all of it. Yeah.
everything.
And it's, it goes all the way out to the planets and the stars and the constellations. And you bring astrology into it and it's like, holy
Sure.
smokes, I mean, like July, I don't know if you know, there's this huge, there's like a six-pointed star being formed in the skies from all the major outer planets around July 20th.
Oh,
It's
really?
like, if you follow any Kabbalah, like the very center to Parath, which is the heart, is a six-pointed
Yeah.
star.
Yeah.
It's forming in the heavens. People are just like that, like there's some of like long-term astrologers, that have been doing this for 30, 40 years, and they're just kind of astounded. They're like,
All
wow,
the long-term astrologers that I know have been talking about 2026 for like for
a
so
long
long
time.
ago that it's just not even, I go, well, we'll wait and see when we get there. When we're here.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is
it's
the
like
year that
this,
everyone's been talking about.
it's like this portal in the heavens
And
opening
particularly from
up.
June onwards, it's like it's the second
Yeah.
half of this year that's really big,
Yeah.
isn't
Well, and this particularly happens in July, but I also think you have to be a consciousness level to be able to receive like there's always the shadow stuff that comes through, and then there's the other level stuff that comes through, but I think we have to be.
But isn't that what our systems are for, Josie? I mean, it's not
Yes.
just about
Yes.
the um last month in May, we were talking a lot about healing and like truths about healing in our online group that we're
Hmm.
in together. And we just go back to the systems and go back to what we know and about,
Yeah.
it's our experience and our like, oh, there's no exceptions. Everything, how I feel is everything can be processed through these systems, right? And if
Yeah.
your system is a particular type of shamanism, if your system is Reiki, if your system is TCM, like whatever it is, if it's a full system, right, and
Hmm.
it's not a method that you're using for your work, but a framework. So your life has to be in integrity within that in order for it to be a true framework, right?
That's a key piece. That's a key
Absolutely.
piece right there.
I think
Yeah.
it's possible to say use Reiki or to
Yeah.
use contemporary shamanism to go to work and do your job. But for me, like, and by the way, I don't like flawlessly skip through my
Yeah.
shamanic Reiki imbued life, never
No.
falling out of alignment. I'm not saying that at all, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my life has to fit within that. It can't
Mhm.
be external from that. And so when things do go out of alignment, and we are humans, if animals are going out of alignment, it will be for different reasons, right? Because they're supporting or they're absorbing or they're processing something. But for us, it will be probably our brains
Yeah.
taking
The,
us,
the monkey mind that
right? That is
gets
taking
us in
us
trouble.
down some absurd, stubbornly created or delusional path, or some like, moral
Yeah.
rightitude or something. All of these things that humans do. I find that if a system is a true system, I don't know how you feel about this, if it's a real framework that's got that
Hmm.
integrity in it, there should be a way to resolve that
Oh
within
yeah.
the system. And so
Yeah.
for me, I always have to come back in to Reiki and to
Yes.
shamanism. Those are my two like solid
Like
platforms that I can
go-tos.
lean on. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the things I do every day. And writing as well, journaling and stuff is the other thing that I process sort of through words, through written words a lot. If
Hmm.
I can't resolve it within those things, then either it's not a real problem and I should just spin it off and just get on with what I'm doing, or like I'm swerving it deliberately because we can also do that. It's brain stuff. I don't think there's anything that our
No,
systems, if they're true systems, can't resolve for us. Do you agree?
no, I agree. I agree. I
Yeah,
agree. But it's also like you said, we're not it's yeah, it's almost, but we know when we're getting off track, or we can go off track, but then we'll also catch ourselves. But it's because we have daily practices
sure.
that we go back to. Like I journal all the time. I pull tarot cards, at least
Mm.
sometimes daily on a weekly thing, just to kind of get a lay of what's heads up kind of thing. And I look at the
Yeah.
astrology and I do my meditations and I do chanting depending
Just
upon
these
what's
little
going
way
on.
markers, not things we're dependent
Yeah.
on. It's not about,
Yeah.
without the system, we can't function or whatever. Like it has to be a working system, otherwise.
Yeah. It
This
just
isn't
keeps you,
doctrine, right? It's just giving
yeah.
us
And
something
it
that we can
makes the,
feel.
yeah, it makes it's like having guardrails along the path. So if you get too far off, it bumps you back,
Yeah.
kind of, you know?
Yeah. And I know which bit of like the Reiki, which there's always like,
Hmm.
I know which bit of my Reiki, like what symbol, or even if you're going to be really reductive about it, they mean something very specific, right? So
Uh-huh.
this is the symbol. I'm going to sit with this now for a week. It's until I can behave myself again.
Ex exactly.
Stop doing
Exactly.
this
That's
thing
what, yeah.
as
Yeah.
we process. So how do you use the five elements in your own healing? That's too big of a word probably because you've just said you use it for like your whole worldview. But
Well,
if
I've
you can,
really,
it sounds like you could pull in or lean into, you're working through it seasonally is one way.
yeah.
Presumably, can you also sort of lean into the thing that you need to rebalance something?
Yeah, you can. I've been tracking them just personally for 5 years, and also taking a group through. And each year going through the seasons is a little bit differently. Like one year it was really focused on kind of the organ systems. One year, and by the time you get through the whole year, you've gone through and helped support all of your organ systems. So there's acupuncture points you can use for that. You can bring in I did one where, and a lot of these are classes I've taught, but I did one like how to stimulate the acupuncture points in a five element seasonal way. So like you can use moxa where you're burning the artemisia, which is from the sage family, which is also used
Mhm.
for smudging. But you
Yeah.
burn that on the point. You can use for metal, it's for the metal element. It's obviously like the needles. For in winter, we did something where from Tibetan medicine, where they take herbs and make little sachets of herbs, and you
Hmm.
dip them in hot sesame oil and then you put those as compresses on the points. So it's
Okay.
almost like a castor oil pack, but on the acupuncture point. But it gets down into the bones in winter and warms you really well.
Mm.
So that was one example. I also have taken like all of the different medicinal mushrooms and we've taken them for the element, just taking one single mushroom at a time for like a couple weeks, anywhere from like kind of almost going on a journey with that plant as an ally. So you don't
Yeah.
take anything else but the mushrooms, so you can feel how it interacts in your body, how it interacts with your systems, and get a feel for the energies of that. And we aligned them according to the different elemental properties. So which mushroom resonates with the fire element or the wood element, and they
Mm.
came through very clearly. You can also do it with flower essences. I've done it with flower essences. Last year, I did like a whole year journey through the seasons using stone medicine because the ancient Taoists, here's the thing, the ancient Taoists were very into stone medicine. And
As in
they would
crystals or like using,
crystals,
you're right.
crystals and the different stones. So there's a Taoist lineage holder. He's something like an 88th generation lineage holder, Dr. Jeffrey Ewan. He practices in New York and North Carolina, but he uses stone medicine to treat cancer, black
Hmm.
tourmaline to pull these things out of the body. So they actually tell what for every stone they say what meridian it's attracted to, what points to use it on, what the chi is what elements associated with it, all of these different classifications. So that's a whole nother thing too. So you can
You've
take
got
it in
so many
so many
rabbit
different
holes to go
directions.
down.
Yeah, it's like a whole entire, what do they call them where rabbits live? A bear warren
Like a
of rabbits.
warren, yeah.
A warren. Like from Watership Down.
I
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I know.
But it's
But
pretty
it's
cool.
so fascinating to me because I feel like the different layers just proves the theory. Like you say, there's all these different
Mm-hmm.
overlaid matrices of the work, and that's true for all of our work, you know. And I
Yeah.
always look at I don't care for when people mess with the system in a way that just makes it too neat and tidy. And I just think that doesn't, as you say, sometimes you feel like,
Yeah.
I can't feel the resonance here, right? But there are
Mm-hmm.
points where things cross over that just further, what all they're doing is confirming a thing that ancestors in various
Yeah.
places thought. So I like working with contemporary shamanism and Reiki together, for example. When we work with Reiki, we work from the Tanden or
Mm-hmm.
the Dantian as a, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
place. And in the Chinese system, there are three Dantians, right? The main
Yeah,
ones
but the
here.
one in the pelvis is really important. They also
Yeah,
talk
the
about,
really
well,
low one is as well. Yeah, and the heart
yes,
one
there's a
moving up.
heart, and then
Yeah.
there's, yeah, and
Yeah,
then
there's, I
there's,
mean, the chakras are all real, right? All of these points and the
yes,
ones that are like
yes,
here and the ones that are here.
yes,
There's millions of these systems.
yes.
But these kind of three tanden points in the Japanese system, and in
Uh-huh.
Reiki, we work from the one that's down in the abdomen, right? But there are three in that system, and that's part in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the mystical system that it leans into. And in Celtic shamanism, and would have been in Anglo-Saxon shamanism and Germanic shamanism too,
The
same three.
cauldrons, right?
Same
Yeah,
three. It's the cauldrons,
yeah,
it's the same place.
yeah,
They
yeah,
did not know each other. So, and it's
yeah,
not like that I'm saying, hey, guess what? You know, Reiki is actually
yeah.
like, you know, they were talking about shamanism in this way. It wasn't.
No,
It's a different system, but we're perceiving
but
the same things in the body and it's talking about the same
it's
essential truth.
correlative. It's,
Yes,
yeah. It's, and it's
exactly.
proving that there is an essential truth there and there's wisdom there,
Yes.
because how could one culture on one side of the planet have something very similar to another culture on the other side of the
They
planet?
didn't know
So
each
there's,
other.
no, there's got to be true. That's
There's
what,
got
that's
to
what I
be
say in my
something
talk.
real there.
There's got to be truth and wisdom there,
Yeah.
and like it's interesting, they're interesting Tibetan medicine because it was an intersection between the Far East, China,
Hmm.
India, and all the Ayurveda stuff coming up from India,
Yeah.
and the West with Alexander the Great and the Greeks, and then the Silk Road coming through. Tibet was an intersection, so their medicine has things from all three of those. So,
Mm.
but they have like five centers. They have the heart, the throat, like the crown, and then the dantian, and one below that too. So they have five. But anyways, it's just it's really fascinating to
It's
study
so
them. And
interesting. And
yeah,
we
yeah.
can't know everything about all of them, but I think
No,
finding those points of correlation, so long as you know a bit about each of them, right? I think it's really tough to
exactly.
take just like these overly, I don't like when people learn. I'm
Well,
just
it's
going
a
to judge and say how
textbook.
other people should do it. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
like
a
when you
textbook
learn.
living learning,
Yes,
and these people going out and taking like a 2-day workshop. But then you know what I've noticed too, Kay, and this is one reason why I was attracted to your work too. People won't talk about their teachers, or they won't acknowledge their teachers. And
right.
I don't, all of these systems were initially, and many of them still are, orally transmitted from
Mm,
student to teacher. Well, Jeffrey Ewan, who I was talking about with the stone medicine, he teaches, I take his classes online. He does not write anything down because in his lineage, it has to be orally transmitted. You have to
mm,
sit and be present and hear his words come to you. Now, and it's the same thing with like Buddhism, sitting in front of a Rinpoche and hearing their words come to you. You're not just getting the word, you're getting a transmission from them. Like Jeffrey
mm.
Ewan's classes, even on Zoom, I'll be sitting there, and there might be 500 students around the world in that Zoom course. Plus, he's got live students, but I'll be sitting there with a question in my head, and I swear to God, the answer to the question, he will come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen with other teachers. So there's
Yeah.
something, I acknowledge my teachers all the time. I mean, I've had and I've been really, really blessed to come across some really, really amazing teachers from these traditions.
And
I don't
frankly, in ways
lightly.
that you have no business finding it, my friend. Walking into like farm
Yeah,
country, right, so a traditional veterinary school,
vet school,
and
and
there's
yeah,
the dog there with the acupuncture needles, sitting there flicking
and it,
through
like an
a
ER
magazine.
clinic. Yeah,
I mean, these
yeah,
are like, I always think that those things are very lucky. And I've had many
yeah.
strange interventions like that pop in my life to kind of bring some
Hmm.
things that are from my childhood, but some things that have just been delivered along the way. And then over the years, some of it's fallen away, but the learning that I got from that and the growth that I got from that
Yeah.
has not gone. And
And it's like a seed. It's like they
yeah,
plant a seed that then you can take and slowly unfurls. I mean, I just had
yeah.
actually, speaking of my Taoist teacher, I feel like she's here again because I had a dream with her 2 nights ago. I haven't dreamed about her at all. And I had this whole dream with her. She actually said in the dream, she's like, I'm back. And I was like, probably because I'm doing this work and preparing these
Yeah,
lectures. It's like
absolutely.
there's somebody, but I acknowledge all of that because it's not me, it's things coming through. But
Yeah.
again, I think we need to bring the stuff forward.
Yeah,
And
and with like proper depth to the teaching, because what I
yeah.
was going to say before is I don't like when we learn things and they're already pre-intertwined without saying what I
Hmm.
always say is like, this is where this comes from. Like I teach shamanic
Hmm.
Reiki, so look at the brand name, the Reiki shaman. I mean,
Yeah.
so easy to look at that and be like, oh God, what an arrogant load of nonsense. But it's a
But you're
shorthand
the
thing to say.
opposite. Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
shorthand way of saying I do shamanism and I do Reiki, and I think that
Hmm.
those things go together. But I'm always very careful because I'm aware that I'm mixing
Hmm.
systems at that point. I understand
Exactly.
there's shamanic um, roots in all cultures, right? And if you look at energy and medicine,
Yes.
you can trace it all back to a form of shamanism, but it's not the form of shamanism that I'm doing, and I don't pretend that it is. So I always want to say this is the thing that I've invented, and these are the reasons why I think that works and why I did that
Hmm.
experimentation and where it comes from. I think when we learn stuff that's already too intertwined as a system, if you go and learn like, I don't know, I can't even think of one, but you know how
You
stuff.
probably see a lot of it there
Oh,
in
I
where
mean, I'm
you
in
live.
Glastonbury, Atlantean Reiki. What's happening?
Yeah,
I don't
there,
want to hear about
there
that.
you go.
I'm sorry, I'm
That's a
being
good
a
one.
child. I
Yeah,
shouldn't,
yeah,
but you know,
yeah,
that's not
yeah,
that's not a thing. And you can't start there. You have to start with something clean. And then what we're
yes,
creating is context from each of
yeah,
those systems. And that's how we see that they make work. And we see the correlations, as you say, they're not the same, but they were seeing the same things and trying to explain it.
hmm,
When you were talking about your teacher from China, where you were learning the acupuncture,
hmm,
talking about going out and like gathering the herbs and tasting the herbs with the grandfather, right? So the we talk about the word
hmm.
sage as in like not sage the herb, but sage like the
Like the
wisdom keeper,
wise,
like a
yeah,
wise person in the tribe. The word sage, according to my friend Maggie Cunningham, who teaches about like Northern European shamanism, she says that the
hmm,
word sage comes from a root word for taste. And the reason for that is it's the wisdom that's learned from going out into the world and
and
knowing,
tasting,
tasting, knowing when it's going to be ripe, knowing where the herb is and when it's going to be the right time to harvest it. So it's wisdom that's intrinsic to it's relational to the earth.
hmm,
And a lot of what you've talked about today, it feels like it has to be relational, otherwise it doesn't
yeah,
work. And the other thing that you've just talked about that sort of transmission of energy with learning, we've
yeah.
lost our ability. I know I can feel it in myself that I've lost the ability that I used to have to sit and be our attention is being deliberately
Oh, yeah,
turned off by current
it is.
society. I don't want to
It
go into a
is.
rant and I won't, but You
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like people,
Yeah.
especially these days with AI and
Oh,
you know,
oh, it's
using
insane.
computers to
It's
read.
being shut down. I mean
I hope
they
so.
have the
I
they
hope so.
have the they well they have the brain scans of people using AI,
I know.
and hold on, and it's shutting down part of their brains
I mean,
when they
I
use
am
it.
obsessively
It's
eating
really
up
crazy.
all of those studies because it's doing
Hmm.
what I was always like, surely that's what it will do if we allow stuff.
Yeah.
But,
But
you
I
know,
think
it's,
people are, I don't think it's, I mean, people are like moving themselves off of social media because of it.
yeah,
I think it's gonna fizzle itself out. I mean,
yeah.
there may be aspects of it left behind that may
I do.
make
I
our
just want
lives
everyone in
easier,
the
but
world to please stop using
yeah.
ChatGPT.
And
Please, please.
I won't,
But
yeah, yeah. Well, we're going back to that taste thing. I just wanted to say one thing because there's something with the taste and flavor in the Neijing Suwen, which is the one of the most ancient medical book texts that we have available in modern times. They talk about the six flavors of things before they even talk about the five elements.
oh, really?
Yes. So there's something about there's the flavor of tasting it and putting it in your mouth and what that does to the body, and also you're saying like the wisdom of knowing that, you know,
Yes.
it's there's something to that.
I think so. Like that's
Yeah.
embodiment, and it is inherently everything you've said about your systems today has been relational in order for it to make sense, and that just feels
Yeah.
real. But I put you on the spot. You can say no. But like when I think about this thing of our attention being siphoned away, and
Hmm.
you know, I write everything down. I love oral storytelling, and you know me, I don't operate from a script. I'm always, you know, I want to be in relation with the people that are in
Hmm.
my group at that time and sit with those stories. I end up in a weird trance. I don't know how much of that I retain on a conscious level after the fact, but I do think the world, the way everything's constructed, and our connections, it's hard to maintain real connections and real relational grounding in the earth and with our communities within these systems, especially in this world of social media when people can just make up shiny TikToky ones instead of
Yes.
talking about those lived embodied ones that they were actually working through. If you were going to sit with this idea of like lost attention and bringing us back into that connection and that connectedness and those
Hmm.
relational bonds, what element kind of would call you in as like to give you a cure for that, to give me a cure? I'm clearly like asking
It's
you
the
for a
whole
cure.
it's like the whole system though. There's the creation cycle, and then the control cycle is drawing the star through. It's the whole thing. And that's why I set up going through following the seasons through, but taking
Mm.
time, and I do this as exercises with people because I saw them being getting so pulled out, is if you go take your dog out for a walk, but turn the phone off and take your earbuds out of your ear and feel your feet on the actual earth. Go acknowledge and say hi to that tree you walk by every day. I mean, you know this. And make like sitting down next to the tree and just leaning up against the back of that tree with your back against the trunk of that tree and just asking the tree what it has to say about things. What it has it's
Mm.
all of life around us is offering us so much, and we are getting like that attention span thing is purposefully, I swear, cutting us off more and more from nature. So that, you know, I tell people just look at the sky. What is the weather doing? What are the clouds doing? You know, what it's just incredible how much people miss out on.
Yeah,
And you know,
yeah, switch the things off and go outside, I suppose is the answer. All of the elements are
yes.
out there then, right? Everything's present.
Yeah, and you know, I see people like I'll see people out with their animals or even in dog parks and stuff, and the animals just hate the screens. The dogs and cats, mine do. Like if I'm on a Zoom too long, Buddy is like, all right, come here, like bugging
Is
me,
it?
you know, or like, why are you staring at this thing in your hand? they
Yeah.
really get disturbed by it. And I think part of that, there's a huge rise. This is how far off kilter we've gotten. There's a huge rise in anxiety in dogs. Now, when we are like severely affecting the mental health of the dog, like man's best friend, man's companion, to the point where they're loading them up with SSRIs and benzodiazepines and drugs like trazodone to just turn them into zombies. Something, and I've been saying when they first started using Prozac in dogs, I'm like, what? This is wrong, people. Let's take about 10 steps backwards and look at what we're doing.
Mm.
Why are we having to sedate? There are now veterinary clinics that require you to sedate your animal before you walk into the clinic with them. I mean, something is just that's not right. That's a severe imbalance. That's where like the we're completely imbalanced and out of whack,
Yeah.
you know? So they're like here trying to get our attention and tell us something. And the more they try to get our attention, we're like, give them a pill to shut them up.
Yeah, yeah, it's true because we're all spending too much time on screens. But I find I have
It's
a lot of my clients, I do my client sessions remotely.
hmm
I mean, people, if they're
hmm
in Glastonbury or can get to Glastonbury, then they come and see me here. A lot of my clients are overseas. And
uh-huh,
I have got to tell you, because obviously I set up like the space around those people.
uh-huh.
I'm holding that for them and we're working, energetically, of course. And effectively, there's a bit of me over there and there's all kinds of
Yeah.
things going on. The animals sometimes want to be present for that.
Yeah.
And I can see them on the screen, and my client will be very relaxed. I'm thinking of like one in particular, and she was such a good animal communicator anyway. So
hmm
her pets were like super awake, or probably all pets are super awake, but like they knew that she was awake for
She,
them too. And so while
yeah.
I was at a point
Yeah.
where I was like removing stuff and it was sort of like heavier work, like one
Mm-hmm.
of the cats was like
Mm.
front and center on the screen, eyeballing me. Like
Wow.
I'm in
Wow. Yeah.
protection mode here, and I'm like, hey, it's okay. So now I'm having to like hold space with the animals as well. I've actually already got quite a lot to do, but I want to respect you, and this is your space. And then as soon as the energy shifted, I didn't say anything, but in my
Uh-huh.
after I've done like heavy work energetically like that, and then
Uh-huh.
come into like replenishing energy,
hmm
body repair, like soothing, healing work. As soon as I did that, the cat was like, boof, like lying down,
Yeah.
absorbing some of that, like super awake when there was something intense going on,
hmm
staring at
But
me.
that's how connected
That's how
and they're
clever they are.
yes, and they're connected energetically to their people. I mean, some of them, we talk about familiars, they are familiars. I
Mm,
also think a lot of them are like little, I call them bodhisattvas in fur coats,
yeah.
because they're here to they hold space, they're protect, they energetically protect in houses, all kinds of
Mm,
things. I've had some dogs take, like, I'll put acupuncture needles in, and most of the time they can relax and fall asleep. And I've had some dogs that are so vigilant in their protection mode, they don't want to turn it off and just be able to relax, you know?
mm, yeah.
Interesting.
They tell us so much about
Yeah.
what's going on, don't they? I
Yeah, they
love I
do.
love
They
that there's a
do.
world where there are holistic vets and acupuncturists and Taoist witches that are out there in the world treating the
Yeah.
animals. I really love that you're doing that, and I've really enjoyed this conversation, just building layer upon layer of how your systems all fit together and live
Uh,
in all of our bodies, right? How
right.
all of our systems have to do that if they have integrity, right?
Yeah,
They have
exactly.
to stand
Exactly.
up to that multi-layered
Yeah.
interrogation, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's just tuning in, tuning into what's out there.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
yeah.
it's glorious. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Josie. I've
Oh, you're
really,
welcome.
really
It's awesome.
enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And I hope you
Oh
guys
my.
have all enjoyed this as well. Um, Pete, if I put my links on the bottom of this, are people all right to get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. You can put I'm the best place is drjosie.substack.com, because
Okay.
I'm going to be putting more articles and things like that up there. And then I can give you my email address is consultwithdrjosie@gmail.com. So people can email me there if they're interested in a consult. And I do consultations around pretty much around the world now too, as well. So yeah, for
Excellent, because
animals.
you're up there in that in you're coming into your sage years, my friend. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly
Exactly.
that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great news. Thank you so much, Josie.
You're
And
welcome. Thank you for having me.
really,
And
really enjoyed it. And I'm going to close it down here, guys. But if you have any questions for Josie or for me, or just you want to share some of your experience about these circles within your own systems, I
mhm.
always want to hear that stuff. And so does Josie. She's as nosy as I am.
Yeah.
Tell us things. We want to read your comments. And we will see you guys soon. So thank you, Josie, and thank you to all of
Thank you.
you guys.